welcome. I appreciate everyone being here. My name is Steve Urquhart. I'm from St. George. I've been in the legislature 14 years now, 8 years in the House, and this is my 6th session up in the Senate. And I'd like to briefly take 1 minute to talk about the brilliance of legislative process. James Madison and the founders, they were absolutely brilliant in how they set up our nation, and then of course the state of Utah followed that model, where we take society's most pressing, most difficult, and most divisive issues, and we push those to our legislative bodies. Other countries that don't have such a brilliant, sophisticated process, they erupt out on the streets. That's where they handle their difficult issues. And instead, we implode toward the middle. We implode toward our legislative bodies. And that's where we have our big debates. And it's a great honor for me to be part of this brilliant process. It's a tremendous honor that I get to associate with the men and women who are in the state Senate and the House of Representatives. They're some of the finest people I've ever had the pleasure of dealing with. I think that they are wise. I think that they are very courageous. And for 14 years now, I've seen my colleagues take on, address, battle, and resolve some of the most important issues our state faces. And it's just been truly one of the greatest honors of my life. And so now we have a significant issue, an issue that at times can be divisive, but there's no doubt that is extremely important to most Utahns. And these are the issues that affect the LGBT community. And so I'd like to talk about those for just 1 second. As everyone knows, in December, Judge Shelby ruled that same-sex marriage is the law in Utah. And then we've gone through quite a back-and-forth process since that time, resulting, of course, in the stay now. And that issue is going to be taken up by the 10th Circuit and more than likely by the United States Supreme Court. And so there's a lot of life left in that issue. And there still is a lot of controversy involved in that issue, a lot of division, a lot of disagreement. Now that issue, it's going to play out on its own, and that's something that is largely going to be decided by the courts. I want to talk about another issue. I want to talk about SB 100, and that's the bill that I'm running. It deals with housing and employment discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And I want to point out that this issue, it was relevant before Shelby's decision. It will continue to be relevant no matter how the issue of same-sex marriage ultimately is resolved. This is a bill that has been run up here 5 years now. This is the 6th year. Again, the process with this issue started long before this past December. And it's an issue that it does not have anything to do with same-sex marriage. So while we continue to fight and argue and await judicial resolution of same-sex marriage, it's important that we address the issue of discrimination in workplace and housing. I'd like to speak briefly what the bill does. And because, as has been cataloged in the media the past couple of days, there's some intentional misrepresentations about what the bill does. I'll talk about a few of the things that the bill doesn't do. Quite simply, this says that if someone has 4 or more housing units, then they can't make housing determinations based on a person's sexual identity, sexual orientation, gender identity. If a place of employment has 15 or more employees, then they can't make job decisions, hiring, firing based on a person's sexual orientation, gender identity. That's pretty simple, and that's sending the message that we don't discriminate against our fellow Utahns. Everyone has a sexual orientation, gender identity. Just like all the things that exist in the current law. Everyone has a race, everyone has a nationality, everyone has a religion or a non-religion. So these are things that they protect our entire society. They protect all Utahns. And I'd like to point out that while there is significant disagreement over the issue of same-sex marriage, there is not significant disagreement over the issue of discrimination. This is something that a majority of Utahns consistently supports. And that's the job of legislative bodies, is to do the will of the people. And so it's time to pass SB 100. It's time to pass non-discrimination laws statewide. So let me tell you about some of the things the bill doesn't do. Again, there have been intentional misrepresentations, and I think they're out there. Opponents put them out there realizing that a majority of the people want to pass this law, and that the bill will turn into law if, unless they can do something to change the dialogue. So this bill, it does not make it so that the public school bathrooms will be affected in any way. It does not change BYU housing in any way. What this bill simply does is it makes it so that people cannot be fired, people cannot be evicted because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. And so there's talk currently that all bills dealing with LGBT issues should go away this session. And I understand that for the bills that are reactionary to Judge Shelby's decision. Judge Shelby made a decision in December that a lot of legislators are reacting to. And it's appropriate to see how the court system ultimately handles this case before we see how, if and how the legislature needs to react. But again, I point out that non-discrimination legislation, this is its 6th year. It has nothing to do with same-sex marriage. It has nothing to do with Judge Shelby's decision. And so I would like for the people of Utah to let their senators, let their representatives know that this issue should be heard. And so let me show you this. This is a blue note. And this is how people can come up to the Capitol and they can write on the blue note that they want to talk with their senator. And let your senator know that it's time to solve this issue. Let's hear this bill. Let's move forward on this bill. And so, what I would like the people of Utah to do is come to the Capitol and let people know that this issue should be heard. And let me show you how I suggest we do that. The question is if I've received any pressure from leadership to not bring the bill forward. The question to that is absolutely not. I revere my colleagues up here. We've of course had discussions of the best way to proceed on this issue and other issues that affect the LGBT community. So we've had discussions, but I've received zero pressure to not go forward with this bill.
Senator, would you comment on the irony behind the state's history and its inception with regard to discrimination and also what's happening now in the 21st century?
Yeah, obviously the reason for Utah's creation had to do with religious discrimination. And so the settlers of Utah were looking for a place where they could be free, where they could practice their religion without discrimination. You look at some of the earliest advances in voting rights for women. That was in Utah. We've always been a leader on these issues, and so it's time for us again to lead out and show that we are an accepting people. We do appreciate people's rights and their ability to exercise those rights. Housing and employment, it's vital, it's sacred, and this is something that should be protected.
Where sovereignty comes up on this issue from the municipalities, the 17 or 18 cities that I think have already passed this, is it a local issue or is it a state issue?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is, should this be a local issue or a state issue? You know, it's both. And so that's how we handle a lot of things, is the municipalities take a role and the state takes a role. And we're fortunate that a number of our municipalities have let out and passed non-discrimination ordinances. And now it's time for the state to follow that lead. Rather than have a patchwork throughout the state, it's important for us to pass one statewide law and let all of our citizens know that they're valued everywhere.
You said that most Utahns support this. But what about your colleagues at Crown Hill? How do they feel? And talking to them, what are you feeling is the reaction?
So the question is, how are my colleagues reacting to this issue? I think a lot like the people of this state. I mean, for better or worse, that's what we do, is we represent the people, and I think we represent them quite well. And so some of my colleagues are strongly in favor of this legislation, and some are strongly opposed. But I think just like you're seeing for Utah as a whole, a majority of my colleagues will be for this legislation. But in order for us to see that, the bill has to move forward, and we have to count actual votes.
Senator, do you have any indication from Chairman Valentine about the timetable for this moving through Rules Committee?
No. So Senator Valentine, he chairs our Rules Committee, and all bills pass through Rules. I had the privilege of serving as Rules Chair in the House, and you know, let me point out, the bill is not being held in Rules. I mean, it's not. This is bottled up, and so that's not what this is about. Right now, we just started the session, and this first week is dedicated largely, almost exclusively, to appropriations issues. So that's what we're focusing on, not so much bills. What I'm trying to do is to tell my colleagues, as we consider which policy issues should move forward, I'm wanting them to know that there is significant interest by the people of Utah in moving this issue forward. Was that responsive? So,
yeah.
Here because we like to legislate, and if I didn't like to battle, I wouldn't be here.
Do you buy the argument that comments made in committee meetings or statements made about your bill could be used somehow in a defense against Utah's defense of Amendment 3?
Okay, so the question was, because there is a concern that things said in committee might affect the outcome of the same-sex marriage issue. You know, that's something we don't know. I mean, judges, when they write opinions, they can pull from any source they want. But if that is the case, then I would just suggest that my colleagues be bridled, be controlled in what they say. And if the concern is animus, that's the word, it's hatred. That in the same-sex marriage case, we wouldn't want to show that there's hostility, animus toward the LGBT community. If that's the case, then let's hear this bill, and let's not show animus when we discuss it. Let's show respect for LGBT individuals like we should show for every single one. That's you know. So I appreciate the question. It's a very valid question, but it's a simple answer. Let's just be respectful and dignified in the things we say. Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm fine if they do, Robert. If all these bills, again, I think our pressing issues move toward legislative bodies, and I'm fine to hear any and every bill that is brought up. However, I would point out that the bill you referenced seems to be reactionary in response to Judge Shelby's decision, and if leadership decides that we should wait and see how the judiciary handles the same-sex marriage issue, then that's okay. Transferring sponsorship to the House to see if they can break that there, no, I have not considered that. Yeah, I think that'd be a pretty neat thing. I mean, if people want the bill to be heard, then come grab a blue note, come grab a piece of paper, and let us know that you want this issue to be heard. You know, a majority of Utahns, poll after poll, shows that a majority of Utahns want this law passed. They want this bill to turn into law, and I think that that's every indication we need that this bill should go forward. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, give me a call.
Thank you.